Captain Zork slammed his three-fingered fist on the bridge console of the rusty tentacle, his purple skin flushed with excitement. By the 7 moons of Kraxon, crew. We've done it again. His motley band of space pirates cheered with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Blorg, the ship's muscle and proud owner of exactly 1 brain cell, grunted approvingly while polishing his plasma cannon. Squeaky, their communications officer whose voice could shatter glass at close range, chirped something that might have been congratulations. And Nix, the perpetually anxious navigator, wrung his tentacles nervously as he always did when they celebrated too early. The Galactic Commerce Guild never saw US coming. Zork continued, gesturing dramatically at their latest haul of stolen luxury goods. Those pompous merchants handed over their cargo faster than a Zephyrian fleeing a tax collector. The bridge erupted in laughter, except for Nix, who was monitoring the communication channels with the dedication of someone who'd rather not end up as space dust. Captain, Nix interrupted, his voice trembling like a leaf in a quantum storm. I'm picking up a distress signal. Looks like a cargo freighter about 2 parsecs from here. Zork's eyes lit up like twin supernovas. Distress signal, you say? What kind of cargo? Nix's tentacles danced across his console. According to their manifest, they're hauling refined Tylonium crystals, quantum processors, and something called Earth coffee beans. Ship's designation is Murphy's Luck. Earth. Borg's single functioning neuron sparked to life. That's where the humans come from, right? The pink squishy things? Zork waved dismissively, his confidence as inflated as his ego. Humans. Those hairless weaklings. I've heard the stories, but come on. They're barely out of their own solar system. How dangerous could they possibly be? Squeaky produced a sound that could only be described as the mating call of a dying space whale, which the crew had learned to interpret as agreement. But Captain Nix protested, his anxiety levels climbing faster than a rocket escaping a black hole. The Galactic Database has some pretty scary warnings about humans. Something about unpredictable tactical responses and disproportionate retaliation protocols. Zork laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his captain's chair. Disproportionate retaliation. From creatures that can't even regenerate lost limbs. Nix, my nervous friend, you worry too much. Humans are probably just good at exaggerating to scare off small-time pirates. But we're not small-time, are we, crew? The crew responded with enthusiastic war cries, except for Nix, who made a noise like air escaping from a punctured spacesuit. Besides, Zork continued, consulting their target information, the ship only shows 1 life sign aboard. A single human against 4 experienced pirates? Those odds are better than finding water on a desert moon. Blorg cracked his knuckles, producing sounds like breaking tree branches. Should I prepare the intimidation speech, Captain? Absolutely. Break out the big scary weapons, put on your meanest faces, and let's show this lone human what happens when they wander into our territory. Zork stood up, straightening his weathered pirate coat, set course for Murphy's Luck. Today we're going to add human cargo to our list of successful heists. As the rusty tentacle changed course toward their unsuspecting target, Nix couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. His tentacles twitched nervously as he pulled up the Galactic Database entry for humans one more time, scanning the warnings that his crewmates had so casually dismissed. The entry was surprisingly brief, but one line stood out in ominous red text: recommendation, avoid at all costs. Humans have an alarming tendency to turn routine encounters into nightmare scenarios through methods that defy conventional logic. Nix stared at that warning, his multiple hearts beating in an increasingly frantic rhythm. But his concerns were drowned out by the crew's excited chatter about their impending payday. The boarding operation went exactly as planned, which should have been their first warning that something was wrong. Murphy's Luck offered no resistance, no evasive maneuvers, and no desperate pleas for mercy over the communications channel. The cargo freighter just sat there in space like a patient cat waiting for dinner. See? Zork whispered to his crew as they prepared to breach the airlock. Humans are probably too scared to even move. This is going to be easier than stealing candy from a Zephyrian youngster. Blorg hefted his plasma cannon with the subtle grace of a falling asteroid. Squeaky checked her sonic disruptor, producing a sound like a dying star going supernova. Nyx brought up the rear, carrying enough nervous energy to power a small space station. The airlock hissed open, and the 4 pirates stormed aboard Murphy's Luck with all the intimidating presence they could muster. They burst into the main cargo bay, weapons raised, battle cries echoing off the metal walls, ready to strike fear into the heart of their helpless victim. Nobody move. This is a robbery. Surrender your cargo and prepare to be taken prisoner, you pathetic human scum. Silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the ship, came a voice that was disturbingly cheerful. "Oh, hey there, visitors, that's fantastic. I was just starting to get lonely out here. Coffee's fresh if you want some." The pirates exchanged confused glances. This wasn't how terrified cargo haulers were supposed to respond to armed boarding parties. A human emerged from the ship's galley, and Zorik had to admit the creature looked exactly as advertised, pink, hairless, and remarkably squishy-looking. He was average height, wearing a casual jumpsuit and carrying a steaming mug that smelled suspiciously pleasant. "I'm Jake Murphy," the human said, extending his hand in what appeared to be a friendly greeting. "Welcome aboard Murphy's Luck. You guys must be pirates, right?" The boarding strategy was pretty textbook stuff. I particularly appreciated the coordinated breach and the psychological intimidation tactics. Very professional work. Zorik blinked all 4 of his eyes in sequence. "You're not afraid?" Jake laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and slightly unsettling. "Afraid? Why would I be afraid? You guys seem nice enough. Plus, I've been hauling cargo through this sector for 3 years now, and you're actually the first pirates to successfully board my ship. I was starting to think my reputation preceded me or something." Reputation? Squeaky managed to produce something resembling actual words instead of her usual sonic assault. "Oh, you know how it is," Jake waved casually, taking a sip of his coffee. "Word gets around. Space is smaller than people think. I used to do some work for the Terran Defense Force before I got into the cargo business. Strategy and tactics, mostly. Pretty boring stuff, really. These days I just haul freight and practice my hobbies." Nyx's tentacles were now vibrating at a frequency that could probably shatter glass. "What kind of hobbies?" Jake's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh, I collect vintage weapons from different civilizations. I've got this amazing Craxonian pain stick from the rebellion of 2387. And a genuine Zephyrian neural disruptor that still works perfectly. I also study historical military campaigns in my spare time. You'd be amazed at how creative different species can get when it comes to warfare." The pirates were beginning to look less confident and more confused. This wasn't going according to any of their previous robbery experiences. But mostly. Jake continued, seemingly oblivious to their growing discomfort, "I just read about Earth military history. Did you know that humans once fought a war that lasted 100 years? Over succession rights. And another one that started because someone got assassinated, which somehow managed to drag in practically every major power on the planet. We're really creative when it comes to finding reasons to fight." Blorg, whose thought processes moved at roughly the speed of continental drift, finally caught up to the conversation. "Are you threatening us, human?" Jake looked genuinely surprised. "Threatening? Oh, no, I'm just making conversation. It's been weeks since I've had anyone to talk to. I was actually hoping you guys might stay for lunch. I make a mean grilled cheese sandwich, and I've got some of those Earth coffee beans in my cargo hold. Fair trade, organic, single origin stuff from the mountains of Colombia. You can't get coffee like that anywhere else in the galaxy." The 4 pirates stood there, weapons still raised, trying to process what was happening. They'd boarded the ship expecting to find a cowering victim, and instead they'd found someone who seemed genuinely happy to see them and wanted to discuss military history over coffee and sandwiches. Zorik cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Look, human, This is supposed to be a robbery. We're taking your cargo, and you're supposed to be afraid. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Oh, I get it. You need the cargo for something important, right? Financial difficulties? Supply shortages? I totally understand. The shipping business can be brutal, especially for independent operators. Tell you what. But why don't you take a look at my manifest and see if there's anything you can actually use? I'd hate for you to haul off a bunch of stuff that's just going to take up space in your cargo hold. Jake walked over to a nearby terminal with the casual confidence of someone giving a tour of his own home. Let me pull up the inventory for you. I've got about 40 tons of refined Tylonium crystals, which are great if you're into energy weapons or faster-than-light drives. But they're pretty unstable if you don't have proper containment systems. Your ship looks like it might be a Korthax-class raider. Those usually don't come with military-grade containment units. Zork's jaw dropped. How do you know what class of ship we're flying? Oh, I could tell from your boarding approach, Jake replied cheerfully. Korthax raiders have a distinctive engine signature, and your docking clamps have that characteristic whine they make when the hydraulics are running low on fluid. Plus, your weapon's configuration is pretty typical for that hull type. You might want to consider upgrading your plasma cannon targeting system, by the way. I noticed your gunner had to manually compensate for drift when you locked onto my ship. Blorg looked down at his weapon with newfound uncertainty. How could you tell that? Pattern recognition. Mostly. I spent a lot of time studying different ship types and their tactical capabilities. Did you know that Korthax raiders were originally designed as escort vessels? They're actually pretty vulnerable to coordinated attacks from multiple vectors. The armor plating has weak spots right above the engine manifolds and along the ventral weapon mounts. Nix made a sound like a small animal being strangled. Why are you telling us this? Jake shrugged, taking another sip of his coffee, just making conversation. It's fascinating how different species approach ship design. Humans tend to over-engineer everything and build in redundancies for redundancies. But we're kind of paranoid like that. I read this interesting case study about a Terran Navy destroyer that got hit by 17 missiles, lost main power, suffered catastrophic hull breaches, and still managed to complete its mission and limp home. That's impossible, Squeaky protested in her glass-shattering voice. Not really. Humans have this weird thing about not giving up. It's probably a survival trait we picked up during our evolution. We used to hunt woolly mammoths by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. Persistence hunting. They called it. We weren't the fastest or the strongest predators on our planet, but we were definitely the most stubborn. Jake pulled up his cargo manifest on the screen, highlighting different items. Now, these quantum processors might be more your speed. They're compatible with most galactic standard navigation systems, and they're worth about 15,000 credits each on the black market. Much more practical than Tylonium crystals if you're looking for quick resale value. Zork was beginning to feel like he'd lost control of his own robbery. Human, we didn't come here for shopping advice. Oh, I know, Jake nodded agreeably. But I figure if you're going to steal my cargo anyway, you might as well take the stuff that's actually useful to you. No point in hauling off a bunch of junk you can't use, right? That's just inefficient. He turned back to the screen and continued his impromptu lecture. Speaking of efficiency, humans have this saying, work smarter, not harder. We learned that lesson during the Great War of 2089. Initially, everyone was throwing massive armies at each other in traditional ground battles. Millions of casualties, enormous resource expenditure, complete strategic stalemate. The pirates found themselves leaning in despite their better judgment. But then someone had the bright idea to focus on supply lines instead of frontline combat. Cut off food, ammunition, medical supplies, communications. Suddenly, those massive armies became massive liabilities. The side that controlled logistics controlled the war. Fascinating stuff, really. Jake gestured casually at their weapons. Your current tactical setup reminds me of that early phase, actually. You're putting all your emphasis on direct confrontation instead of strategic advantage. Not that there's anything wrong with that approach, it's just not very efficient. Nix's tentacles were now twitching so violently that he looked like he was having some kind of seizure. What would be more efficient? Jake's face lit up like he'd been waiting for exactly that question. Well, if hypothetically someone wanted to take over a cargo ship, they'd want to control life support, navigation and communications first, disable the crew's ability to call for help or escape, then negotiate from a position of absolute advantage, much cleaner than storming in with guns blazing. He paused thoughtfully. Of course, that strategy assumes you're dealing with a typical cargo crew. If you happen to run into someone with military experience, well, that's a different problem entirely. They might have already thought of those vulnerabilities and prepared countermeasures. The temperature in the cargo bay seemed to drop several degrees as the implications of Jake's words sank in. Countermeasures. Zork's voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. Jake set down his coffee mug and walked over to a seemingly innocent wall panel. Oh, you know, standard stuff. Nothing too fancy. He pressed a few buttons and suddenly the pirates could hear the unmistakable sound of weapon systems powering up throughout the ship. For example, Jake continued conversationally, most cargo ships don't come equipped with automated defense turrets, but I had a few installed last year after an unpleasant encounter with some Rigelian slavers. They're voice-activated and keyed to my biometrics, so they'll only fire if I'm, unhappy about something. Blorg raised his plasma cannon nervously. Are you unhappy about something? Me? Oh no. I'm having a great time. This is the most interesting conversation I've had in weeks. But the turrets don't really understand context. They just know that 4 armed individuals boarded my ship without permission and are currently pointing weapons at me. The targeting system is probably calculating optimal firing solutions right about now. Red lights began blinking on various panels around the cargo bay, accompanied by a low humming sound that suggested large amounts of energy being redirected to weapons systems. The thing is, Jake continued, completely ignoring the growing panic on the pirates' faces, I also sent out a little message to a few friends of mine when your ship first approached. Just a standard, hey, if you don't hear from me in the next few hours, you might want to come check on me kind of thing. Standard procedure for anyone hauling valuable cargo through pirate-infested space. Nix made a sound like a deflating balloon. What friends? Oh, just some guys I used to work with. They run security for cargo convoys now. 3 cruiser-class escort ships, full crews, latest generation weapons and shielding. They were only about 6 hours away when I sent the message, so they should be arriving any minute now. Jake checked his wrist chronometer with the casual air of someone checking the time for a dinner reservation. The funny thing about humans, he mused, is that we have this really inconvenient habit of keeping track of our friends. If something happens to one of us, the others tend to take it personally. Like really personally. I heard about this incident where some pirates attacked a human research station, took hostages, demanded ransom, the whole traditional piracy playbook. The pirates were now backing toward the airlock, but Jake seemed oblivious to their retreat. The ransom negotiation went on for about 3 days. Standard stuff. But then the pirates got impatient and decided to kill one of the hostages to show they were serious. Big mistake. Jake's cheerful demeanor never wavered, which somehow made his words infinitely more unsettling. Turns out the hostage had served in the Terran Navy with about half the fleet commanders in that sector. Within 6 hours, there were 47 human warships surrounding the pirates' base. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't offer negotiations. They just started shooting. Squeaky produced a sound like a small star collapsing in on itself. The official report said it was a proportional response to terrorist activities, but between you and me, I think they were just really, really angry. Humans don't like it when you hurt their friends. We're funny that way. Jake walked over to another control panel and began making adjustments. Anyway, I'm sure my buddies will be reasonable when they get here. As long as nothing bad has happened to me, they'll probably just want to make sure you guys understand the importance of choosing your targets more carefully in the future. The automated defense systems continued their ominous humming, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear the sound of Jake's communications array broadcasting what sounded suspiciously like a distress beacon. "The good news is," Jake said, turning back to face his increasingly terrified guests, "humans are actually pretty forgiving. We don't hold grudges forever, usually just for a few decades, maybe a century or two if it's something really serious. And we almost never hunt down someone's entire extended family for revenge. That's more of a weekend hobby than a full-time occupation." Zork was now sweating profusely, his purple skin taking on an unhealthy greenish tint. "You're bluffing. You're just one human on a cargo ship." Jake nodded agreeably. "You're absolutely right. I'm just one human on a cargo ship. But here's the thing about humans on cargo ships. We're usually the ones who are too dangerous for regular society, but not quite dangerous enough for military prison. It's like a job placement program for socially maladjusted tactical specialists." He gestured around the ship with obvious pride. "I mean, look at this place. Does this look like a normal cargo hauler to you? The automated defenses, the military-grade communications array. The fact that I knew exactly what class of ship you were flying before you even boarded. I'm basically a one-man traveling disaster waiting for an excuse to happen." The pirates exchanged increasingly panicked glances as the full scope of their mistake began to dawn on them. "You know what the really funny part is?" Jake asked, settling into a comfortable chair that he'd apparently positioned for exactly this type of conversation. "I actually retired from the military because I was getting too creative with my problem-solving approaches. My commanding officer said I had an alarming tendency to turn routine operations into elaborate revenge fantasies." He took another sip of his coffee, completely relaxed while his four guests grew more agitated by the second. "There was this one incident where some hostile aliens captured one of our supply convoys. Standard negotiation situation, right? But instead of going through the usual diplomatic channels, I suggested we kidnap their chief negotiator's pet, teach it to play poker, and then send back videos of it winning huge pots against other captured alien pets until they agreed to our terms." Zork blinked rapidly. "Did that work?" "Oh, we never got to try it. Apparently it violated about 17 different interspecies treaty provisions and at least 3 laws of war that nobody even knew existed. But the point is, that's how humans think. We don't just solve problems. We solve them in ways that make everyone involved question their life choices." Jake stood up and walked over to a control console that the pirates were just now noticing was significantly more complex than anything that should be found on a standard cargo hauler. "For instance, right now I could just disable your ship's life support and wait for you to suffocate. That would be the efficient solution. But where's the creativity in that? Instead, I've been thinking about something much more interesting." His fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease. "See, your ship's computer systems are broadcasting on standard galactic commerce frequencies, which means I can access your navigation logs, cargo manifests, and communication records. Did you know you guys hit 7 different ships in the past 2 months?" The pirates watched in horror as their entire operational history appeared on Jake's screen. The Lucky Strike, the Zephyrian Dream, the Cargo Princess, and 4 others. All small-time operations, mostly independent traders. You've been working this sector pretty systematically. Jake turned to face them with that same cheerful smile that was becoming increasingly terrifying. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to contact every single one of those ships and offer them your current location, your ship specifications, your crew complement, and your typical operational patterns. Then I'm going to suggest that they might want to pool their resources and come have a little chat with you about compensation for damages." Nix made a sound like a small mammal being fed into a wood chipper. "You can't do that." "Can't I?" Jake pulled up another screen showing a detailed schematic of the rusty tentacle. "I've also taken the liberty of scanning your ship's hull for structural weaknesses. That microfracture along your starboard engine mount is really concerning. One good hit in the right spot and your whole propulsion system could come apart." He highlighted the problem area in pulsing red. I'll make sure to include that information in my report to your previous victims. Professional courtesy, you understand. Blorg hefted his plasma cannon uncertainly. We could just shoot you. Jake nodded thoughtfully. You could try. Nay, but then my ship's automated systems would immediately transmit my final logs to the Terran Defense Force, along with detailed sensor readings of your ship and crew. Within a week. Within a week. There would be bounty hunters from 17 different species looking for you. Humans pay really well for information about people who kill other humans. He gestured casually at the weapons pointed at him. Plus those defense turrets I mentioned. They're not just voice-activated, they're also biometric monitored. If my heart rate spikes or my brain activity stops, they automatically switch to full hostile mode and start shooting everything that isn't bolted down. As if on cue, several red targeting dots appeared on the pirates' chests and foreheads. The really clever part, Jake continued, is that I programmed them with human tactical algorithms. They don't just shoot to kill. They shoot to incapacitate and then keep you alive for questioning. Humans are really good at keeping people alive when they want information from them. We learned that skill during some of our more creative historical periods. Zork was now visibly shaking. What do you want from us? Want? Oh, I don't want anything. This is just how I spend my free time now. Back when I was in the military, I had to follow rules and regulations and international law. It was very restricting. But out here in the cargo business, I get to be much more creative with my problem-solving approaches. Jake pulled up yet another screen, this one showing real-time locations of ships throughout the sector. For example, I've been tracking ship movements in this area for months, just as a hobby. I know where all the major shipping lanes are, which asteroids provide good hiding spots, and exactly how long it takes security patrols to respond to distress calls in different regions. He pointed to various blinking dots on the display. Those 3 ships there? They're Terran Defense Force patrol cruisers. I sent them your location about 20 minutes ago, along with a detailed analysis of your operational patterns and a suggestion that they might want to set up an ambush at your most likely escape routes. The pirates stared at the screen in growing horror as they realized that their usual hiding spots were now marked with ominous red warning indicators. The beautiful thing about humans, Jake said, settling back into his chair with obvious satisfaction, is that we're natural-born strategists. We don't just react to problems, we anticipate them, plan for them, and then implement solutions that address not just the immediate issue but all the potential future complications as well. He raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. Welcome to human-style problem-solving, gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed your visit to Murphy's Luck. 20 minutes later, the 4 pirates were huddled in their ship's conference room, which smelled suspiciously of fierce sweat and poor life choices. They'd managed to extract themselves from Jake's cargo bay, but not before he'd helpfully provided them with detailed repair instructions for their ship's critical systems, which he'd somehow disabled during their friendly conversation. I still can't believe he did all that while just standing there talking to us, Nix whimpered, his tentacles wrapped around his head like a neurotic hat. Zork stared at the datapad Jake had given them, which contained step-by-step instructions for fixing their engines, life support, and weapons systems. The human had been thorough to the point of including helpful diagrams and safety warnings. Look at this, Zork muttered. He's even included a shopping list of parts we'll need and the names of reputable dealers in 3 different systems. Who does that? Blorg, whose brain was still trying to process the last hour's events, made a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. The scary human who could have killed us but decided to educate us instead? From the communications console, Squeaky produced a series of sounds that roughly translated to "I want to go home and rethink my career choices." Jake's voice crackled over their comm system with the cheerful tone of a customer service representative. "Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that your engine repairs should take about 4 hours if you follow the instructions carefully. I've also included contact information for a really good therapist who specializes in post-traumatic stress counseling for reformed pirates. She's helped a lot of former clients transition into legitimate careers." Zork keyed the comm with a trembling hand. Human, we just want to leave. We promise we won't bother you or anyone else ever again. Oh, I believe you. But before you go, I've taken the liberty of updating the Galactic Piracy database with your information. Nothing malicious, just a helpful entry that other cargo haulers might find useful. Nix's tentacles turned white with terror. What kind of entry? Let me read it to you, Jake's voice came back with obvious pride. The Rusty Tentacle, Captain Zork commanding, crew of 4. Previous targets, small independent traders. Threat assessment, low to moderate against standard commercial vessels. Special note. Has encountered human crew member and survived the experience through immediate cooperation and willingness to pursue alternative career paths. Recommend diplomatic approach if contact is unavoidable. The pirates exchanged glances. That actually sounded reasonable? I've also added a subsection, Jake continued, with your ship's technical specifications and tactical vulnerabilities, just in case anyone needs that information for research purposes. Very academic stuff. Zork felt his stomach drop into his boots. You listed our vulnerabilities in a public database. Only the ones that might be relevant for defensive purposes. I'm not trying to make your lives difficult. I'm just contributing to the general body of knowledge about interspecies conflict resolution. Jake's tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious but maintaining that unsettling cheerfulness. Here's the thing, guys. I actually like pirates, conceptually speaking. You're entrepreneurs working in a challenging industry with minimal overhead and maximum risk-reward ratios, but you're also terrible at target selection and strategic planning. The comm system crackled as Jake apparently settled in for a longer conversation. So I've prepared a little graduation present for you. In addition to the repair instructions, I've included a comprehensive guide to identifying high-value, low-risk targets, along with a tactical manual for boarding operations that don't end with everyone wanting to kill each other. Nix made a sound like a balloon with a slow leak. Why are you helping us? Because reformed pirates make excellent cargo escorts and security consultants. The skill sets are almost identical, but the pay is better and nobody shoots at you as much. I've already sent your information to 3 different shipping companies that are looking for experienced security personnel. Jake paused, and they could hear him taking another sip of his coffee. Plus, and this is the important part, if you guys go legitimate, you can help spread the word about why messing with human cargo haulers is a bad idea. Think of it as a public service announcement with a personal testimonial. Zork looked around at his crew, seeing his own exhaustion and confusion reflected in their faces. And if we don't want to go legitimate? Well, that's your choice, obviously. But I should mention that I've programmed my ship's computer to automatically send updates about your location and activities to my friends in the security business. Just in case you decide to go back to your old habits. The cheerful tone never wavered. It's not a threat, it's more like a subscription service, very convenient for everyone involved. Squeaky managed to produce something that sounded almost like words. We'll take the legitimate jobs. Excellent choice. I've already forwarded your applications along with my personal recommendation. You should hear back within a few days. As the Rusty Tentacle limped away from Murphy's Luck 4 hours later, Zork made one final log entry in their ship's computer. Updated Galactic Piracy database. New entry: humans do not engage under any circumstances. Recommend immediate career change if contact is unavoidable. Personal note. May find different line of work. Preferably something involving minimal human interaction and maximum distance from Earth shipping lanes. Back aboard Murphy's Luck, Jake Murphy finished his coffee, updated his own logs, and settled in for the next leg of his journey. Just another day in the cargo hauling business, and another successful customer service interaction. He made a mental note to pick up more coffee beans at his next port of call. You never knew when you might have unexpected guests who needed a good cup of coffee and some friendly career counseling.